thank you all for coming here tonight in remembrance and honor for our honoree, President George Washington. I remember when I was in kindergarten as a young child, my teachers would regale me stories of his greatness. He was an excellent man, and I hold him in the highest regard. Now, I know that when we normally first think of George Washington, we probably think of him as our first president. He did an excellent job of this, but he did also many great things other than that. Today, I'd like to share with you a little bit about all that he has done. George Washington was born in a planter family in Virginia. He enjoyed it a lot. He was well educated. Military arts and Western expansion fascinated him. At the age of 16, he decided to go and survey new lands because of his great love for the West. At the age of 22, he decided to go and fight in battles that ultimately became the French and Indian War. Now, while there, Mr. Washington showed his great bravery. During one attack, 2 horses were shot from underneath him, and he still continued fighting. Also, after the same fight, it was discovered that 4 bullets had pierced his coat throughout, and he still continued fighting because he was such a brave man. At the end of this war, he returned home to his plantation. Now, while there, he realized the strict restrictions that the British had put upon him. In response to this, he voiced his strong opposition to it. Now, for many of us, when we can easily say something, but it's very hard to follow our thoughts with actions. But Mr. Washington did just this. During the Continental Congress, he served as a Virginia delegate. And during the Second Continental Congress, Mr. Washington was elected to become the commander of the American Army. It was during this war that he showed his excellent military knowledge. Instead of using the military European style, he elected to instead use the style that he learned in the French and Indian War. Due to this, he led the troops to victory when Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown. After this, Mr. Washington wanted one simple thing. He wanted to return home to Mount Vernon and retire simply. But he realized that this was not to be. The American people needed him. He realized that the Articles of Confederation were causing a problem, and so he pushed for change. In response to this, the Constitutional Conventions occurred. Our Constitution was ratified in Sinai, and the Electoral College did what we all know was the right decision today. They unanimously elected George Washington as the first president of the United States. George Washington did many excellent things as president, and we will always fondly remember him for that. At the end of his second term, the people wanted him to continue, but George Washington knew that it was best for the company if he did not. Now, at the end, when Mr. Washington passed away, the nation mourned him very much. He was a truly great man. So let's all raise our glasses in honor of Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Now, does anyone have any questions?
I do. I've heard the story of George Washington and a cherry tree. Could you tell me that story?
Well, so the story goes, supposedly, Mr. Washington had received a hatchet, which was a big deal. He was very anxious to try it out. So upon seeing a cherry tree that his parents had planted, he elected to use his hatchet to cut it down. When his father got home, he was not very happy, and he asked Washington who had chopped it down. Due to his great sense of integrity, Washington replied, "I cannot tell a lie, father, it was I." And instead of the anger that Washington expected from his father said how pleased he was that Washington would not tell the truth, would not tell a lie, and that was meant quite a lot to him. Does anyone have any other questions?
Is there a real story?
Well, there is actually no evidence of it having actually occurred.
Where did it come from?
Well, a man named Mason Weems was a biographer at the time, and he decided to make it up, so it seems.
I have a question.
Yes.
You spoke of a European fighting style. What is that?
It would happen to that the 2 armies that were fighting would fight up to that without any shield or protection. They would just come at each other. Unfortunately, many men on the front lines frequently died from it.
Well, what fighting style did the Americans use?
The Americans used a fighting style that George Washington had learned during the French and Indian War. They would hide behind trees and rocks so that they would have some kind of shield when the bullets came. Are there any other questions?
When did George Washington die?
It was in 1799 that he died.
I have one.
Yes.
What's a Continental Congress?
The Continental Congress is when representatives from the 13 states met in order to decide what was to be done about the strict British restrictions that had taken place. Does anyone have another question? Thank you.